The silent pillar. The world was still dark when Daniel's alarm buzzed. He groaned, rubbing his face before sitting up. His bones ached from years of hard labor, but there was no time to dwell on exhaustion. He had a family to provide for. Slipping out of bed, he moved quietly, careful not to wake his wife and children. In the kitchen, he poured himself a cup of instant coffee. Black, no sugar. There was no breakfast for him. Not because there wasn't enough food, but because he'd gotten used to skipping meals. He told himself it saved money. By the time the sun peeked over the horizon, Daniel was already at the construction site, wearing his faded work boots and dusty uniform. "Morning, Dan," his coworker, Luis, greeted. Daniel nodded. Morning. The work was back-breaking, lifting, hauling, hammering under the relentless sun. But he didn't complain. He couldn't afford to. Complaints didn't pay the bills. At lunchtime, he sat on an overturned bucket, scrolling through pictures of his children on his cracked phone. Emma, his eldest, had her mother's eyes. Jonah, the youngest, had just lost his first tooth. He smiled, feeling a familiar ache in his chest. This was why he worked. Why he pushed through the pain. The burden no one sees. At home, things weren't much easier. After work, Daniel would walk through the door with a tired smile, hiding his exhaustion so his children wouldn't worry. He would listen to their stories, help with homework, and fix whatever needed repairing around the house. By the time the kids were asleep, he was too tired to eat. Some nights, he sat on the porch, staring at the stars, wondering if anyone saw how much he was giving. His wife, Maria, would sometimes find him there. "You should rest more, Daniel," she'd whisper, pressing a gentle hand on his shoulder. He would nod but never listen, because in his mind, resting meant slowing down. And slowing down meant failing his family. The breaking point. One evening, after an exhausting shift, Daniel's vision blurred as he drove home. His head pounded, his hands felt weak, but he kept going. Until suddenly, blackness. When he awoke, the hospital ceiling greeted him. Machines beeped beside him. Maria sat at his bedside, her eyes red from crying. "Daniel," she whispered, gripping his hand, "why didn't you tell me you weren't okay?" He swallowed hard, shame creeping up his throat. I didn't want to worry you," he admitted. Maria shook her head. "Do you think we only love you for what you do? Do you think the kids only need your money? They need you alive, healthy, happy, and so do I." Tears burned in his eyes. He had spent his whole life believing love was measured in sacrifice. But he had never stopped to think that love also meant taking care of himself, a new beginning. Daniel didn't quit working, but he started eating breakfast. He started sitting down for meals with his family instead of fixing broken appliances after dinner. He let himself rest on Sundays, and for the first time in years, he truly smiled, not just for his family, but for himself. Because now, he finally understood he wasn't just a provider. He was a person who deserved care, too.